Well, it's been a nice break. Well, for you guys, it won't seem like it's been a break, but for me, it's been a bit of a break. Today's date for me is January 22nd, and the last episode, though it aired rather recently, for me it was filmed back last month. I think it was like, what, the 19th? So it was filmed about a month ago. So yes, Meg and I, we had a little bit of a holiday. Not necessarily us leaving this house, but just, a holiday from the web series, which I think it did us both a lot of good. We had a good Christmas. For Christmas Eve, her family came over, we ordered Chinese food, we watched the original Christmas Story, which I hadn't seen before, and it was rather delightful. And then Christmas Day, we went over to her parents' house, and we watched the sequel to A Christmas Story. Not the really bad one that came out in, 2010 or something. No, it was The Christmas Story Christmas, which has, Ralphie as an adult and whatnot. That one was good. It wasn't as good as the original, but it was rather pleasant, I will say. Had a lot of funny moments in it, too. So yes, we had a really nice holiday, and I think the break from, doing the web series did us both a lot of good. Meg's doing better, I'm doing better, so there's that. But all good things have to come to an end, and of course, the story that awaited me for my return was not a pleasant story. Thankfully, it was too long to read out loud on the web series, so I won't have to read it out loud. But I still read it, and I had to take notes on it. You've read the title right. Jesus and Hitler, a romance. If you're hearing noises outside the door, that's because Meg's outside. She's watching TikTok and stuff. I mean, I've already read the story, so nothing too worrisome, but, I wanted her nearby just in case, so don't mind the noise out there. So this story, the author is Anne Crass. Not sure if that's how you pronounce it or not. Let's read the summary. Adolf Hitler, which they spelled his name wrong by the way, travels back in time and meets a man who will change his life forever. So this story is not complete. And it was updated a little over a year ago. So there's a chance that this author might update it some more. But I'm going to let you all know now, and I also have the creator's permission on this. If they do update the story, I'm not touching it again. Yes, so there's that. So, it's rated M, of course it is. It's in English. It's romance drama. The character is Jesus. I guess they can't list Hitler because, he's a real person, but I digress. It has 7 chapters, 4,238 words, 2,034 reviews. 573 faves, 255 follows. The fact that many people like this story. I mean, I get it, it's supposedly a trollfic, but it's just so distasteful. So let's read the author's note and then I will go into the summary of the first chapter. Copyright notice. The characters and events in the below story are of my own creation, and any theft thereof will be strongly frowned upon. So you're telling me that you created Jesus Christ and Adolf Hitler? I doubt it. In fact, I know you didn't. So you have no copyright claims on these two people at the very least. And why would you want to claim ownership to Adolf Hitler, out of all people? I digress. So, I wrote down a brief summary of the first chapter, because again, I'm not going to read it out loud, but I will read my summarized version of it. Adolf Hitler, who is somehow still alive in the year 2025 despite being born in 1889, uses a time machine to escape from American soldiers attacking the Reich Chancellery. He winds up in the year 29 AD and meets Jesus Christ. After convincing Jesus that National Socialism is wonderful. The two go to bed together, and Hitler convinces Jesus to have sex with him. Yes, it's one of those stories. So like I had stated before, they spelled Adolf's name wrong. This is how they spelled it. It's not supposed to be spelled with a PH, it's just supposed to be an F. And then this is how they wrote Reich Chancellery. They not only combined the two words, but they added in an extra S. I don't get it. And then this is how they spelled Führer. I mean, not only did they misspell Führer, but they misspelled mine. They wrote it as the English mine and not, German. It's just, overall, this bloody chapter had a lot of bloody typos. Layout was somewhat decent compared to later chapters, and we'll get back on that. But here's one thing that really stood out to me. At one point, when they're describing Jesus's manhood, they described it as turgid. The definition of turgid means that it's congested. So he had a congested penis. Right, so let's move on to chapter 2. I will read the author's note before I go on with the summary of this chapter, because the author's notes are just, I have to read them. Here's the second chapter of my epic romance, long thought lost, but rescued by a loyal fan. Please remember that the characters and events in this story are fictional, and I retain all copyrights. No, you don't. You don't own any of the people in this story. Unless you made up a fictional character of your own, then that would be your character. But so far, what I've seen in this story, all the people are, not necessarily, you know what I mean. So, right, here's a summary of chapter 2. Yes. So, Jesus and Hitler have been living together for 2 years. And yes, it was disgusting. After a very disgustingly graphic sex scene. It was really disgusting, by the way. I wouldn't recommend reading it. Hitler proposes to Jesus with a cock ring. A cock ring. A cock ring. Jesus says yes, but they need to ask God for permission because, God is Jesus' father. So, they sneak into the palace of Pontius Pilate, which I probably said that wrong, and go on a gory killing spree so they can get caught and get executed. Their plan works, and they get executed and magically go to heaven despite murdering a bunch of innocent people, including children. It's because they didn't commit suicide. Because apparently, it's more of a sin to kill yourself than it is to kill someone else. I don't get the logic, and that's why I'm not religious. When they get to heaven, they go to God's living room. Yes, he has a living room apparently, and declare their love for each other. At first, God is mad, but he quickly gives in and leans in to kiss Jesus on the forehead as his blessing. He then somehow misses and winds out making up with his own son. Just when you think that's gross enough, it gets worse. Jesus, God, and Hitler end up having the most over-the-top threesome that has ever been written. I kid you not, it was so bloody disgusting. When the incest-filled sex scene is finally concluded, it goes on for 4 hours, by the way. 4 hours! God sends them back to Earth to get married via traditional Jewish ceremony. And that's the end of bloody chapter 2. Right, now, let's share the screenshots of these lovely typos for this chapter. First up is boys. That is clearly not how you spell boys. That's the text version of boys. I actually thought I had more screenshots for this chapter, but apparently I didn't. All I'll say is that the layout got worse in this chapter versus the first chapter. One of the main issues was that the dialogue was not separated into separate chapters, or in separate paragraphs, I'm sorry. So it made finding out who the hell was supposed to be talking rather confusing. And the grammar itself got worse as the chapter progressed, but again, with how the story is, I'm not surprised. And spoiler alert, it gets worse. It definitely gets worse. So yes, chapter 3. Let's read the author's note for chapter 3. Here's chapter 3, modified from the original for more sensitive audiences. Let us give thanks to Ray's test account for saving it from oblivion. Also, Jimothy, interesting name, is a character of my own creation, so don't use him without my permission. See, that's the only character you would actually own, and that's where your copyright would actually make sense. But I digress. Right, so here's the summary for chapter 3. Jesus and Hitler have a 21-year-old adopted son. He's not really 21. He's clearly a child, and as you read the chapter, it's very obvious that he's a child. The reason being that he's stated as 21 was, I guess, because the story got taken down because of its, this. So they changed the age to 21 so they could get away with what's about to come in this chapter. Oh, yes, take a wild guess. So his son is talking to Jesus and is talking about how his pee-pee gets hard sometimes and that it feels good when he touches it. Jesus says that it's just him growing up and that it's natural to feel that way when thinking of girls. Timothy, though, clarifies that he gets like that not only when he thinks of other boys, but when he thinks of his 2 fathers. Now, a sensible father would bring their child to counselling and be like, you're not supposed to have feelings for your parents like that, because even though we adopted you, we are still your parents, and no matter what, that would be considered incest and very, very wrong. Does Jesus do this? No, he doesn't do this. You want to know what he does? He has his 21-year-old son who still uses baby terms like pee-pee and daddy. And he has his 21-year-old son give him a blowjob. Jay, I wonder why this story was originally reported. If I was reading this live, I would be a lot more right now. This is why I miss doing the summarized reviews. I could keep a better control of myself when it came to stories like this. So, after the loveliness of what I just described, they go to take a bath together. And then Hitler, it's revealed, saw the entire thing, and he's angry. It's like, oh good, one of the parents has common sense. So after he tells Timothy to go to his room, he confronts Jesus. And Jesus is like, oh, well, Joseph did the same thing to me when I was his age. So that's why I'm gay. Molesting someone as a child does not magically make them gay. It traumatizes them, obviously, but it doesn't make them gay. That's... Yes, so Hitler's response is, all's forgiven. Let's go get ice cream. Let's go get ice cream. Let's all get bloody... I mean, hello. You just walked in on your significant other molesting your child, and your solution is, let's get ice cream. Yes. No wonder this story got reported. So, here are the notes for chapter 3. The only notable thing I could find is that it's listed that Hitler's height is 6'5". In reality, the man was 5'9", so he was an inch taller than me. Right. Chapter 4. The author's note. We'll get started with the author's note. This is the latest entry to my multi-chapter epic. There's nothing epic about this, which deals with bigotry and religious intolerance. As before, all of the characters featured in my story are copyrighted and you may not use them without my permission. After enjoying this, you should also view the readings on YouTube, the links to which can be found on my profile page. Now enjoy. Who wants to bet that my review will eventually show up on his bloody profile page? Whatever. So, here's the bloody summary, sorry. Every time I exit out of my little note thing, it just like boots me out, so I have to scroll back down to where my notes are, so apologise about that. So here's my summary of it. Jesus sees that Hitler's working away at a typewriter. He asks what Hitler is writing. Hitler says that he's writing a follow-up to Mein Kampf and wants to call it Mein Kampf 2. I'm probably saying that wrong, I'm sorry, I'm not German. Jesus mentions that the kids at daycare, further clarifying, mind you, that their son is not 21 but is a child, keeps mentioning the word Bible and says that may stick out at a bookstore. We'll get back to the Bible thing in a later chapter. Just when they are about to get kinky, yes, the story is literally full of sex. It's like a sex scene every bloody chapter. Jesus' disciples show up and attempt to cure Jesus of his homosexuality. They fail and get kicked out of the house by Hitler, and that's pretty much what happened in this chapter, not really much to note on. So here are my notes for this chapter. It still has a very awful layout. And again, still confusing to see who's speaking and who's not speaking because they don't have spaces or anything like that. Oh, and let me show you how they spelled my camp. I mean, at least they spelled camp right, but again, they spelled mine wrong. It's supposed to be, you know, the English word is my. I digress. So here's the lovely author's note. Author's note. Welcome to the latest chapter. Even the grammar in the author's note gets worse and worse with each chapter. They forgot to capitalize the W in welcome. Welcome to the latest chapter in this epic romance about two star-crossed souls. This epic chapter will teach readers about the dangers of Western medicine and the power of faith to overcome any challenge. This story and its characters are copyrighted, so if you steal them, you will be in deep trouble. This is a fan fiction, dearie. You can't do anything if someone steals your characters. Oh, and by the way, the only character that you actually own is Jimothy. So, here's a summary. Jesus and Hitler go to a temple to get a free vaccine for Jesus. The vaccine makes Jesus act very weird and stupid. Hitler brings Jesus home and cures him with the power of love. They then make love. When they are done, Hitler says that he wants to make a run for the Roman Senate and wants Jesus' support. Jesus gives it. There's really not much substance to this story. There really isn't. Because most of the story is, we're going to have sex, more sex, oh, drama, sex, more sex, sex. Oh, by the way, do you want to have some sex? That's all it is. Yes, there's that. And there's less substance as the story goes on, too. It's ridiculous. Right, so, screenshot time. Let me show you how they spelled the word vaccine. Apparently, not vaccine, it's vaccine me. Here's the next screenshot for you all. It's supposed to say I and will, and it technically does still say it, but they just have like random letters capitalized. And then a little bit later on, instead of using the word way, they use the word war. How the hell do you mix up way and war? Oh, and here's the final screenshot for this chapter. Now, ooh, it's supposed to say now. Yes, I would say that the typos get worse and worse with each bloody chapter. Right, so let's read the chapter 6 author's note. Greetings, my friends, in this touching yet steamy chapter. Our saviour and Fihir meet a man who might be more than meets the eye. Although, it's supposed to say although, I do enjoy it when people read the stories. I must warn you that any attempt to infringe me is prohibited by copyright law. I'm not going to say anything else on this because it's like beating a dead horse. You have been warned. Alright, so chapter 6. Here's a summary for chapter 6. Sex. The chapter is just sex. Well, okay, there is like a Hitler rebellion that happens, and Jesus stops this by showing Hitler's newest best-selling book, the Holy Bible. It's implying that Adolf Hitler wrote the Holy Bible. Guess what? He didn't. Bastardization, that's what this is. And then after that, there's more sex. So that's pretty much it. So now we can finally move on to the final bloody chapter. Oh, not many notes for this chapter, just there's tons and tons of spelling mistakes. Like, there are so many spelling mistakes in this chapter that I just gave up doing screenshots because it was just getting more and more ridiculous. It was bloody ridiculous. If you don't believe me, read the story yourself afterwards. And pretty much the only other complaint is, again, bad layout, bad spelling, bad grammar. Same complaints as the other chapters. So, the final bloody chapter, thank bloody Christ. Let's read the author's note. Welcome to the new chapter of my marvelous epic. This chapter is dedicated to 3 friends of mine who recently came out as NB. NB. I don't know what that is. I wept tears of joy, knowing that they are finally being true to themselves and not suffering from having to hide away. You are seen and you are loved. This tale is my own creation, and readers are not allowed to make unauthorized copies. This is illegal. Right, here's a summary. Hitler is changing the sheets of their bed after, you guessed it, sex. Hitler then comes out as non-binary to Jesus, and they, guess what, have more sex. Hitler dresses as a girl, and they go to the Senate. They shame the other senators for staring, and magically everyone becomes accepting of his choice of clothing. I mean, I do like the message of being accepting and all. The fact that one of your characters is Adolf Hitler, who caused one of the most devastating genocides in all of history. And some of those victims were people who were, you know, gays, lesbians, trans. Yeah, yes, Adolf Hitler. But yeah, so, right, this same issues, same grammatical issues. It's just, okay, let's just, you know, we're just going to talk about the overall story and what I thought of it. It was utter garbage. Utter garbage. So stupid. It got worse and worse as it progressed. You couldn't take it seriously. I mean, I know it's supposed to be a troll fan fiction, but I mean, come on. Adolf Hitler and Jesus Christ. Why? Why? I mean, I don't know if this is more distasteful than that story that Meg reviewed years ago, the one with Anne Frank. I don't know. I mean, don't write stories with Adolf Hitler. Don't. He's scum. He should be remembered as scum. This story tries to make him out to be a good guy. No. And then trying to say that he wrote the book. No. No. This story, no wonder it got reported. And your modifications to it do not make it any better. Because their son was clearly supposed to be a little child. And then the whole thing about the threesome with Jesus, God, and Hitler. Blah. Nah. And then the sex. What was with all the sex? Really? What is with these porno fanfictions? I'm sick of them. I'm sick of reading porn. Well, that's all for today's episode. If you somehow enjoyed it, please be sure to leave a like and leave a comment. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I would greatly appreciate it. I'll see you on the next episode. Until then, cheerio.